My dear brothers and sisters in Christ Jesus, today I want to talk about what the Bible says regarding the fires that have started in California. The world welcomed this new year 2025 just a few days into it, and the fire started in Los Angeles, in the famous Hollywood Hills, and the fire kept on increasing, and in spite of thousands of firefighters and various people involved in putting it out, they were unsuccessful, and the fires began to continue to devour nearly 40,000 acres of one of the most wealthiest places in whole of America. And we see in the news every day continually, even after 7 days, the fires is raging with nearly 12,000 multi-million-dollar houses and businesses burned to the ground, and with absolutely nobody who is able to stop this. In spite of all these efforts, only about 10% of the fire is contained, and now there is new prediction that more fierce winds are expected, which can further increase the spread of this fire. Well, brothers and sisters, when we look at all the news that is before us, we are reminded of one passage in the scriptures in the book of James chapter 5, in which particularly God is speaking against the rich people. We see that in James chapter 5 verse 1.
Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you.
You see, he is talking to the rich men and he says, weep and howl for the miseries that are going to come upon you. And that is what we are seeing on the various Instagram posts and YouTube videos and news. We see the rich are howling and are weeping on camera because their multi-million-dollar houses with all its expensive things that are in it are totally burned down. Not just one or two, but entire neighborhoods have been destroyed. And we immediately see this verse and we realize that this was very clearly prophesied in the Bible a long time ago. And here particularly he speaks about the rich, and he says how everything they have is corrupted and how the great destruction is going to come upon them. In verse 2 we can read on.
Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten.
You just imagine how many expensive designer clothes they would have kept in their houses, because that area in the Hollywood Hills is full of celebrities, most of them who had made millions and millions of dollars in the Hollywood film industry, and also through various TV shows, and many celebrities from sports are also there. And you can imagine what kind of stuff they had there, and now everything burned to the ground. And then in verse 3,
Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days.
he says, you have made so much wealth just for these last days. So he's going to say that all this is the last days. The last days, everything you're going to lose, your silver and gold and all that is going to be corrupted. And so, brothers and sisters, as it is written and as we see every day happening, with nearly 50 celebrities who have lost their houses in that very area. Not one or two, brothers and sisters, more than 50 up to 70 celebrities who had their rich villas built over there. One of the wealthiest landscapes. Now today it is called hellscape. It is like ghost town. And one of the mayors has said that it is like as if an atomic bomb was dropped there. Such is the devastation there. A place which was so beautiful full of wealthy people and beautiful, costly houses, now today in total ruins. So when we see this, we can imagine why this is happening. Many people are asking, is it a judgment of God? Or some are saying, is it from the devil? Is the devil causing this fire? And some, of course, who don't believe in God or the devil, they simply say this is the result of the climatic changes, and therefore nobody is behind it. But brothers and sisters, very clearly those of us who believe, we know that God could have stopped it, but he didn't stop it. No, we can't say Satan brought this about, because Satan wouldn't destroy his own people. Most of those people who are living there are largely godless people. They are those who have renounced their faith in God. They are not God-fearing people, but they are living in luxury, and they made this money not in the right way, but by entertaining people, entertaining the sinful desires of the people. That's how they have come up. And that's what we clearly see in the next verse, in verse 4.
Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth. And the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth.
You see how they became so super rich. It's not through honest means, isn't it? They did not become wealthy by hard work. You can't become so wealthy by doing honest things, isn't it? How they became wealthy? By renouncing all decency, and by exposing themselves, and by indulging in activities which is only meant to entertain the sinful desires of man. There is no boundaries in these movies, as we can see. So they do all these things just to entertain the godless people, and for that they are paid. And they are paid in such amounts which really doesn't justify it in any way. Because every dollar is the toil of somebody. Money means labor. Now these people, just for showing themselves naked in front of the cameras, they are paid so many millions of dollars. Now that is unrighteous, isn't it? That is not right. The hard labor of so many people are just simply given to them because of their ungodly acting, or whatever you call that they do to entertain people. Now our Lord Jesus clearly said that if anybody look upon a woman with lust, they are committing adultery with them in their heart. Now what these people are doing? They cause millions of people to lust on their beauty and commit adultery, isn't it? Not only are they causing the people to sin against God, they are setting various standards by the very way they dress and the very way they act. You can see them in various poses. You can see them taking bath, or in swimming pool, in bathing suits, or totally in bed and making love on screen. All this is causing the people to commit sin against God. In the same way, it goes on to violence also. If seeing somebody and lusting them is equal to adultery, then seeing somebody killed or murdering somebody and being entertained by that, that also is equal to committing murder, isn't it? Because the Hollywood is full of all this violence, in which people are killed for nothing. The hero takes on the gun and kills so many people, and they're stabbed and killed in so many horrific ways. And all this is supposed to be entertainment. And those who watch it also are part of the crime. So what these people are doing is they're making wealth in unrighteous ways. They're getting millions of dollars for doing all these things. Or like thievery. You apply the same principle. If thievery is wrong, then watching that and enjoying seeing banks being robbed or jewelry is being robbed, now that also is equal to committing that crime. So all this is evil work, and through this way only all these celebrities have earned so much easy money, and they're living as they wish without any fear of God. Of course, they don't believe in God, they deny God, and then that is how their end will come. In the Bible we very clearly see. In next verse we read verse 5.
Ye have lived in pleasure on the earth, and been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter.
You see, you lived in pleasure, he says. And been wanton means you have done whatever your flesh desires. That's how you have lived. You did not care whether this is against God or this is against justice, or is this right or wrong. That's how their lifestyles are, isn't it? They live as they like, lavishly. They spend so much on themselves. Their houses are filled with goods which are so expensive. They pay so much for the furniture, so much for just for one painting. So all this is they are doing at the expense of the poor. Isn't it, brothers and sisters? The richer the rich person becomes, the poorer the poor become. The more rich a person becomes, the more poor others will become. This is in proportion to each other. The more rich they become, the more poor others will become. So, this is what James is saying. You have amassed wealth in the wrong way, and now you are living in luxury, whereas you did not care for the poor. Now, how many people in this world are suffering in hunger? They don't have food. Children do not have food. So many people can't have medical treatment and are suffering in pain and diseases. So many people do not have basic needs like house or water. And in this situation, when millions of people are suffering like this, these wealthy few are living in wantonness and pleasure and luxury. There is a limit, isn't it, even for desire. They like car, okay, they buy one expensive car, but they do not stop there. They want another car, another car. They want a fleet of cars. In everything that they do, they spend so many millions. But at the same time, all this money could have been used for the sake of building hospitals or houses for the poor, or giving water or food for the hungry. But they do not do that. That's how they are living, and that's why this cry has come up to the God of Sabaoth, we read. And what he is going to do next, we read in verse 6.
Ye have condemned and killed the just.
See.
And he doth not resist you.
You see, that's how you have been living, and you have saved all these things for the last days. So in the last days, you are going to wail and weep because destruction is going to come upon you. Brothers and sisters, in the Bible, apart from a few exceptions, the Bible clearly portrays the rich as being godless and arrogant and selfish and inconsiderate to the poor. That's how the Bible clearly shows the rich. There are some exceptions, very rare exceptions, wherein a rich man can be a righteous man and someone who is rich can be pleasing God. That's very rare. In the same book of James, there are two persons that are mentioned. In chapter 2, of course, we have 21-22 mention of Abraham. Now, he was very rich. We know there were 318 servants in Abraham's household. He had become rich because the pharaohs had given him so much wealth also. But at the same time, he was called the friend of God. That we see in from 21.
Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar.
So Abraham mentioned there, and verse 22-23.
Seest thou how faith wrought with his works, and by works was faith made perfect? And the scripture was fulfilled which saith, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness. And he was called the friend of God.
So this is one exception. Abraham was extremely rich, but at the same time he was so close to God, called a friend of God. Another rich person who was very righteous in God's own words is Job, that we read in chapter 5 verse 11.
Behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy.
So he mentions Job. Job was a rich man. The very first chapter, very first few verses we read, he had so many thousands of camels and donkeys and servants and all that. He was very rich. And later on he was put to a test, and at the end of the test, when he came out as gold, God doubled his fortunes. That rich man who was already wealthy had become double rich as a blessing from God. But he was still righteous, and he earned his riches in the right way, and he pleased God. So these are some rare instances, and of course we have David, who was a king. So needless to say, he was a wealthy man, but yet he was a man who was after God's heart. God was pleased with David, except one or two instances. He was a godly man. But other than them, very few people in the Bible were rich and at the same time godly. Most of the others, including Solomon, how he began to accumulate wealth. He had gathered silver like stones in his time. He was so super rich. But what did he do? He displeased God. He went after so many women and horses and all these possessions that ultimately led him to deny God and even go and worship strange gods. So, rich generally in the Bible are portrayed as godless and arrogant and proud, and God usually resists the rich, and he always shows mercy to the poor. That very clearly we see in the parable in Luke 16, where Jesus himself says there was a rich man called D.S.P. and how rich he was and lived in luxury and fed sumptuously. But what happened to him? He went to the fire in the end, isn't it? But the poor man, he went to Abraham's bosom. So, very clearly, the rich cannot remain faithful to God. Most of the people cannot handle riches. And that is why in Proverbs chapter 30, verses 8 and 9, Agur, one of the writers of these Proverbs, he says like this in chapter 30, verse 8 and 9.
Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me.
So here is a man who is saying, just give me enough food. Don't give me riches or poverty. He is saying, don't give me riches. Why? In the next verse he explains,
lest I be full and deny thee and say, who is the Lord?
So that's what will happen when we become rich. Lest I deny thee when I am full, and then I say, who is the Lord? That's what happens. You see, when we are poor, we are dependent on God. We always run to him for our needs, and he is a faithful God, and he helps us, and we are in turn grateful to him, and we are dependent on him. We have a strong relationship with God. But when a person becomes rich, his dependency is on his wealth. He boasts in his wealth. He trusts in his money. And therefore, his need for God becomes less. So much so that he has got so much money, and he knows that he is secure, and with his money he can get whatever he needs. And ultimately, because he has a lot of money, he does not have to work. No, he becomes idle, and then to spend his time in pleasure, he will seek various means of pleasures. And at that time, he will not care whether this is pleasing to God. They began to take on new passions and desires because they can afford them. And that is how they become sinful and greedy and go far away from God. And they have so much that they do not relate to the poor also. They do not understand how difficult it is for the poor to get money. How hard they have to work to get even just a few dollars. How many hours they have to put in order to get even little money. They do not understand all this. Like the queen, when people were rioting outside her palace, protesting outside her palace, she asked, why are the people shouting? And somebody said, they're shouting because they do not have bread. You know what the queen said? She laughed and said, if they don't have bread, ask them to eat cake. That's how they don't understand. The rich do not understand the difficulties of the poor, because they have everything easily given to them and they have so much in abundance. They don't realize even to get a little bit of money how hard the poor should work for that. So they become inconsiderate to the poor. They become self-sufficient, proud and arrogant. And of course, with riches, pride will come in. Arrogance will automatically come. They think they have power. They are better than others. That is, all this, what I'm saying is what the scriptures very clearly tell us in the Bible, isn't it? And the scriptures encourage people of God not to go after money, not to desire to become rich, but rather to be content. Because along with this riches will come various snares and traps which will take us away from God. We can read that in 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 6 onwards.
But godliness with contentment is great gain.
You see, godliness with contentment is great gain. What you have, be content with what you have. What salary God has given you. Whether God has given you a small house or enough to go by. Be thankful. Godliness with contentment. You be godly. God will take care of the rest. You ask God for whatever you need. But you be content. Rather than seeking for more and more and more and more. That is what the prosperity preachers will want you to have. They will create the desire in you to get easy money. You will become rich instantly. Without working, you will become rich. Now, that is very unrighteous, isn't it? To want to become rich without having to work for it, that again is evil. Because money is toil and labor of other people. Now, if you try to get it without working, then that is evil. That is like stealing. For example, you take gambling or the lottery system, in which you just buy one ticket and you can become a millionaire. But you might become a millionaire, but that money is not rightly earned, because that money is the labor of so many other people. One person becomes rich, but thousands of people are disappointed and they become poorer. So, brothers and sisters, he says, be content and be godly. That is the right thing to do. And then in verse 7.
For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out.
You see, we brought nothing into this world. So much money we want to earn and keep on hoarding money and making it more and more and increasing our bank balance or adding new properties to our name and building big houses, accumulating so many material things. But when we die, what is going to happen to all this? We are not going to take it with us. We are going to leave everything, our palatial houses, all our expensive clothes and jewelry, and all our money. We are just going to abandon it and go to the dust naked. So if that is the case, why are you toiling for accumulating money, he says? Because we brought nothing, we take nothing. Like the story in which Jesus said, one man's field gave him a lot of increase. And when he became so rich, what was he thinking? He was saying, I'll build more barns. I will store up all these grains and say to my soul, you have enough for many years. Take ease and enjoy your life. But Jesus said, you fool, what will happen to all your wealth if you lose your life tonight? So when we die, we don't care anything, we leave everything. But on the contrary, if we use it to help others, use it for God's glory in a way that pleases God, then God will reward us for that. We will have our good works to carry with us. But if we have so much amassed wealth, it will not come to our use in any way. Some say, whatever I amassed, whatever money I made, I'm going to leave it to my children. It's not going to waste. They're going to enjoy it. But even our kids, they don't deserve to easily acquire so much wealth. Money should always be earned by hard work. It is not to be easily received without having work. Because our children, we are obliged to give them good upbringing. We need to give them good food and shelter so that they may grow to be healthy. And then we need to give them education which will help them support themselves. But we are not to lay up treasure for them so that they don't have to work. And if they don't have to work, they will become idle and they'll become arrogant and lazy and they'll become sinful also. So we don't have to lay up treasure for them. Even if God has given us money, we should use it as good stewards for God's glory. We are not to lay up wealth and to leave it for our children also. Jesus very clearly said, unless you love me more than your children, you cannot be my followers. So we have to love the Lord more. So to do what is best for God's interest with what God has given us is what we are called to do. Not just to lay up treasure for our children and then cause them to become godless in future. So brothers and sisters, that is what he says in verse 8.
And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content.
See, contentment is just food and raiment, he says. He does not even say one house also. Just we have food because we have to live on to do God's work, and then we need raiment. To do anything, we need to be dressed, clothed. Those are the basic necessities. Let us be content with that, because what we need till we are alive here, so much if we have, that is enough, he says. Because all the extra things, we are not going to take it with us. So let us be happy and thankful if we have enough to eat and to wear and to have what we need to do God's work. That is enough, he says. Because if we, on the contrary, have desire to make more and more money, desire to become rich, then we are putting ourselves in great spiritual danger. That is what we see in next verse.
But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition.
You see, those who want to become rich, they fall into various traps and snares, he says. They fall into various scams and they will end up in difficult situations because their love for money will cause them to invest in so many things, and later on they might get into debt and into various other crime related matters. It's very simple as this. You got a lot of money and you buy a very super fast car or super bike or something. Then you go fast in that and you meet with an accident. You see how much dangerous it is. Like that, you get money, you get into an illicit affair, and that will lead you into more sinful habits. That's what usually people do. Those, once they get hold of money, they started adding new things to their life. Though they have their own family, they will set up another family. This is usually is what is happening around the world. They become unfaithful to their spouse and they will cheat their own family also. So this money will start creating in them desire for various entertainment and pleasure, because we don't need all that money. All we need is food and raiment to do God's work. But what if we have so much money? Then we get bored with doing the normal things. And then with this money we want more and more pleasure. We go after more pleasure. And in the end we pierce ourselves with many harmful and destructive habits which will ruin our life. It will take us to perdition. That's what he says. Again, we'll read that.
But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition.
You see, finally it will cause us to be destroyed. Riches can destroy us. That is what he says in verse 10.
For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows.
You see, the love of money is the root of all evil. Many of us may not be rich, because God, when he called us, he didn't call many wise and many noble, but he called the foolish and the downtrodden, isn't it? That's why there are not many rich among believers. Very few might have some riches, but most of us, we cannot handle riches, God knows, and God calls only the poor only. Even when Jesus Christ was anointed, he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and he has sent me to preach good tidings to the poor. And likewise we read in the Bible that the poor heard him gladly, not the rich. The rich are self-satisfied, they're happy, they don't need God, they don't need good news because they already have good pleasures in their life. It is the poor who need the good news, and God calls the poor only. Not many wise and not many noble. Not that nobody is rich at all. There may be some exceptions, but the general rule is God calls the poor. And therefore, brothers and sisters, we should not have the desire to become rich also. Though we are not rich, if you have that love of money, want to make money in an easy way, in a fast way, there are so many temptations, isn't it? Once that mind comes, we want to make more money, then we don't bother about the way in which we make money. We get into dishonest ways also. And usually it is only through dishonesty can a person become rich in these evil times, isn't it? If you use genuine products, if you work honestly, use all good items, you cannot become rich. Only by using fake things, duplicate things, that's how people are becoming rich. If you do honestly, you cannot become very rich. Maybe you can support yourself and somehow run your business, but you cannot easily become very rich unless you indulge in all wrong practices. So, the desire to become rich, that love for money will cause us to sin against God. Most of the cases we feel, most of the people who go after money will fall into some debt trap and into various difficulties, and they end up losing everything and lose faith in God also. And they become depressed and murmur against God, and that's how they die. But even if they are successful, then also they put themselves into various traps and snares which will take them away from God. So, the Bible very clearly says, do not love money. Do not want to become rich, but rather be content with what God has given you. And be godly, because we brought nothing into this world. We are not going to take anything. So if we have our basic necessities met, that is enough to continue in godliness. And what we do is we earn God's goodness. We do good works. And that is our riches. That is the riches that we should earn for. Because very few who are rich in the church, there is good advice given to them also. That we see in verse 17 onwards in the same chapter 6 of 1 Timothy.
Charge them that are rich in this world that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy.
You see, those who are rich, he says, you advise them how to be. He gives them 4 advices here. And he says the first thing is,
charge them that are rich in this world that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches.
You see, first of all, they should not be high-minded. Richness, with the richness, that high-mindedness will come. Thinking that you are higher than others, thinking that you are too smart and wise and become proud and boastful. That is what the rich usually do. That's a trap, Along with riches, pride will come. So, first of all, do not let your riches make you high-minded or proud or haughty. And secondly, do not trust in uncertain riches. Just because you have a lot of money, don't think that that money will save you. Just look at those who have lost their houses and businesses in California, Los Angeles. How much money they had, but was their money able to save their houses? No. So much money, so much influence, so many fans they had, so many powerful contacts they would have had. But nobody was able to save them or their houses. So these riches are uncertain. Don't trust in your riches. And it's uncertain in the sense because you might have a lot of money today, but tomorrow it might be lost. That is how wealth usually, Solomon says, it takes wings and flies off. That we read in Proverbs chapter 23 verse 4 and 5.
Labor not to be rich. Cease from thine own wisdom.
You see, labor not to be rich. Don't put all your time and energy and efforts on becoming rich. Don't try to become rich. Why do you want to become rich? You're not going to carry away anything. And having riches, you cannot do all the evil things because you know God. So why you want to become rich? Be content. And then next verse.
Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings.
See?
They fly away as an eagle toward heaven.
Riches make themselves wings and they fly away. How much you may have, but you can lose so easily all those things. So many people who won these various lottery tickets and become rich overnight, very soon they'll become poor again. They lose all that because they have not earned it in the proper way. They will not know how to spend it also. They start wasting and spending it off just like very soon they will again be penniless. So, even if you are wise also, just imagine you meet with an accident, you lose everything. Or you are infected with some disease, then all this money will go to the hospital. How many people I have seen, rich people who wouldn't even help their own brothers and sisters and own family because they are so love of money, they have so much love of money, they don't want to give money, but just keep on holding on to money. They get some diseases and get admitted. And every day thousands of rupees, for months and months until all their wealth is gone. So you can lose. And our Lord also said in that parable very clearly, don't lay up treasure on earth. Isn't it? He very clearly said, don't lay treasure on earth. Because here the thieves get in and steal what you have. And here the money will get rusted and cankered. That's what Jesus said. But lay up treasure in heaven, Jesus said. Now lay not treasure on earth. In our days, there are thieves who come in so many different ways. Nowadays, in our times, this digital scamming has become so popular and so shameful to say that India is called the scam capital of the world. There are people who are trained just to deceive. Very simply, you just call, you need something, and you Google up a phone number, and you call that number. It will go to a spam center. There they act as if they are calling on behalf of that company. They will act as if they are bank employees, or they are from Google staff, or they are from government also. And they will start scamming you. And they say, you do this, you do that, you may have to pay so much, you have so much fine against you, and they will take up all the details. And there are scam centers for that scamming purpose only in India. And they will contact people in foreign countries, it seems, where there are many people, retired people and widows, and so many who are not so aware of all this online activities. They are not so well versed with the computers and all that. They will easily take control of their system and siphon off all their hard-earned money, their savings, overnight. And so many times you would have experienced that, almost you got scammed. Church, one young girl, she got scammed to the tune of 50,000 rupees. Many months' salary she used to send it to them, because they would just call her and say, this is your phone number, this is your Aadhaar number, now this Aadhaar number has been used in an illegal way, and you'll be arrested and you'll be put on jail, and in order to escape that, we will show you this, and you have to pay so much money. And they used to make video calls also, and many of them, not just one person involved. Usually one person calls just like from the call center, and she will connect you to another person, concerned person. And some were posing like police, with the police dress and all that. And so foolishly she sent money, and before she realized, she had lost 50,000 hard-earned money to the scammers. So Jesus is saying, don't lay up treasure here where thieves break in and you lose all that you have. But rather, if you start using it for God, because if God gives us wealth, if God gives us more than what we need for, we are not to hoard it, brothers and sisters. We have to use it for God. Use it to help one another. To use it to help the needy, especially in the church. First to the household of faith, and then to all those who need. We need to do good. We need to distribute what God has given us. Like in the story of the talents. Each one was given a talent, and the master said, occupy till I come. Use it till I come. Don't just keep it. The one who just kept it safely, he was the one who was cast away, who was condemned by God, who was punished by God. But other ones, they used it, isn't it? So whatever talent, whatever wealth God has given us, He's given us a good job, we have earning more than we need. We are not to keep on loving that and keep on adding that, increasing it, adding more and more to it until we become very rich. But rather we should start using it to help others. That is what he says in the next verse in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17. We read again.
Charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy.
We should trust in God, not on our money. And then in verse 18,
that they do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to distribute, willing to communicate.
You see what they should do with their wealth, if they have wealth. Not many have wealth, but for the few people who have wealth, if they have wealth,
that they do good, that they be rich in good works.
You see, that they do good. They be rich in good works.
Ready to distribute, willing to communicate.
See, ready to distribute. They should distribute what God has given them among the needy people in the church and elsewhere. They have to communicate. Communicate means not just talking. Today we use the word communicate only for conversing. Communicate in the Old English means to help them, to meet their need. Not just tell them, be careful, take care of yourself, be warm, and so on and so forth. We should help them. If we have it, we should help them, because if we have money, if we have wealth, and we do not help those who are in need, it becomes a sin. Usually those who are rich, those who have money, they say, I earned it in the right way, it is rightfully, it belongs to me, and therefore I am not obliged to give it to anybody. But if you do not help those who are in need, even though you have the power to help, it will become a sin. That we read in James chapter 4 verse 17.
Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it is sin.
There you say, to him who knows how to do good but does not do it, to him it is sin. So it will become even sinful if we are having wealth and not helping those who are in need. It will become sinful for us. So, brothers and sisters, going back to verse 19, we complete what Paul was telling to Timothy in verse 18 and 19.
That they do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to distribute, willing to communicate, laying up in store for themselves a good foundation against the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life.
So if you are doing good, if you are rich in good works, if you are distributing your wealth and communicating to those who are in need, you lay up treasure in heaven. That is what he says. You lay up for future, for eternal life. You will be rewarded eternally for what you do here temporarily with your temporary wealth. Because our life here itself is temporary. You see, even if you have a lot of wealth or you are poor, our life is only temporary. So in that short life, if you are wealthy and use that wealth to do good, that you will reap eternally, he says. Read that once again.
Laying up in store for themselves a good foundation.
You see, laying up for themselves a good foundation
Against the time to come.
For the time to come.
That they may lay hold on eternal life.
That's what Jesus said. Lay up your treasure in heaven, where the thieves cannot break in and steal what belongs to you. So the good works you have done, God is keeping note of that. All the money you have given to God. Now God keeps a track of all that you have done to God, isn't it? Though nobody might take an account and come and ask you for that. In the scriptures, very clearly, in the New Testament, the tithing is not mentioned. Because that was a law given to the people under the Old Testament. There they had to give 1/10. Of course, it was not just a law, but even before the law was given, we have a good precedence. Because Abraham gave 1/10 to Melchizedek. God did not ask him to do that, but Abraham, father of faithful, he set a precedence for others to follow. And Jacob, he is another patriarch. He said to God, of all that you give me, I'll give you 1/10. So this need not be under the law. It can be followed by anybody. But in the New Testament, the tithing is not mentioned because in the New Testament, we are called to give everything. Not just 1/10 of what we have. We are to give everything to God. Everything that we possess belongs to God. 1/10 would be very less. But still, many people do not even have that practice of giving the minimum to God. That's the minimum. It's the starting point. So at least we can start with that. But we should not think that since I have given my 1/10, I have done everything. I don't have to give the rest and I can enjoy all the rest. No. In the New Testament, tithing is only the minimum. We have to give all that we have. In proportion to what God has given us, we should give to God. So, very safely to say, we should have for ourselves the basic things, like food and raiment or basic necessities. And whatever more God has given, that we should use for God's glory, to help God's people and to do good works. And all this will lay up treasure for us for the future. So, brothers and sisters, because of this only, in the scriptures, James very clearly, strongly, he advises the believers not to look upon the rich as though they are highly blessed and to treat them in a special way or to choose them above the rest. He says, rich, what type of people they really are, And we should not be giving them special preference because of the riches. Very clearly, he explains why, the reason why we should do that in chapter 4 of James. We can read from verse 4 onwards.
Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God.
Yes, if you are a friend of the world, entertaining the people of the world and being entertained by these godless people, then you are an enemy of God. That is what we see. All these celebrities, they are not godly. They are not God-fearing. Very, very exceptionally, one or two maybe believers, but most of them, they are godless lot. And they don't care about God. They mock God and they do all things not caring what God has said. And if such people are your heroes, whom you love to watch and you are entertained by them, then you can be sure that you are an enemy of God. And then in next verse,
do ye think that the scripture saith in vain, the spirit that dwelleth in us lusteth to envy?
You see, what kind of spirit these Hollywood celebrities they give out? And that is not the kind of spirit that we should be having. And then next verse in 6.
But he giveth more grace. Wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble.
You see, he's talking about the rich actually. If one come in your church wearing a gold ring and costly dress, you say to him, come sit here in the front, the main chair. And if one come poor and you said, sit hither near my footstool, you are doing partiality. That is the context in which saying. And then he says,
but he giveth more grace. Wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble.
God resisteth the proud, gives grace to the humble. The rich are usually proud, and God resisteth them. But what you are doing is, you are doing the reverse. You are giving preference to the rich and you are resisting the proud. That is not right, he says in verse 13.
Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain.
You see, the rich people are always talking about money, about this project, about that project, this scheme and that scheme. I want to plan like this. I want to plan my future in such a way that in 1 year I will be getting so many returns, and always talking about making money. Whereas he says in verse 14, you do not know what will happen tomorrow.
Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away.
So the rich people always make big plans. They plan into future, making so much money and all that. Whereas God is saying, you may not live up to 1 year. You may die tomorrow. What will happen to all your plans? Because all that is about making money. That does not include anything about God and living for God. So what a waste it is going to be.
But now ye rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil.
See, now you rejoice in your boasting. Rich people always are boasting of their own achievements and their own salaries and their own promotions and their houses or their cars or their possessions. All these things are vain.
Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin.
You see, that's what he says. So all this he says, and verse 2 onwards, he is asking us to understand the attitudes of the rich and the poor and how we should not be showing partiality that we see in James chapter 2 verse 2 onwards.
For if there come unto your assembly a man with a gold ring in goodly apparel, and there come in also a poor man in vile raiment.
So this is what I already said. So you do partiality.
Are ye not then partial in yourselves, and are become judges of evil thoughts?
You see, you're becoming evil by judging like that.
Hearken, my beloved brethren, hath not God chosen the poor of this world, rich in faith, and heirs of the kingdom which he hath promised to them that love him?
You say, hath not God chosen the poor? He says, you are choosing the rich. If somebody comes who is very rich and well-to-do and educated, or maybe come from America or Europe, you think he is very special to you. But God is chosen the poor things, he says, and the way God looks at is not on earthly material riches, but God looks at those who are rich in faith. See that again?
Hearken, my beloved brethren, hath not God chosen the poor of this world, rich in faith,
See?
and heirs of the kingdom which he hath promised to them that love him?
You see, the poor love God more. That is the main thing. The rich love their money more. They love themselves more. They love high seats and recognition everywhere. But the poor, they love God. They love to do what God is pleased with. And they are the ones who are going to be heirs of the kingdom. They are the future rulers. So when that is the case, you are ignoring the future rulers because they are poor, and you are choosing the rich ones, but who are really not rich, in faith. In faith, in knowledge, in all holiness and love of God, they are very, very poor. So poor that they are miserable and they beggarly. That is what the Laodicean church was described as being. The church in the last days, most of the believers, how they will be in the last days. Very clearly, he says in Revelation chapter 3 verse 17, isn't it? We read that.
Because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods, and have need of nothing.
You see? That's what they are, in the worldly terms. They think they are rich, they have very good businesses, they have a lot of bank balance. So they say they are rich and have need for nothing. You see, they think they don't lack anything. They have everything. They are the successful people. They have achieved many things in life. That's what they think.
Because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods, and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked.
How they are described spiritually. When God sees them, they are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. Can you imagine that state, actual state, when God sees them in his eyes? They are like a beggar who is naked and who is blind and who is miserably in all filth and all disease. That's how they are spiritually. They don't have full faith in God. They don't have holiness. They don't have love for brethren. They don't have knowledge in the scriptures. But they think they are rich and they have increased with goods and they have need for nothing. Spiritually, that is how the status of most of the majority of the Christians in the last days. So, brothers and sisters, he is saying in James, you too don't do the mistake of choosing the rich above the poor, because God has chosen the poor of this world and made them heirs of his coming kingdom. In James,
Hearken, my beloved brethren, hath not God chosen the poor of this world, rich in faith, and heirs of the kingdom which he hath promised to them that love him?
then
But ye have despised the poor. Do not rich men oppress you and draw you before the judgment seats?
you see, he's saying, you're choosing the rich over the poor, but the rich people, they are the ones who judge you. One small wrong thing you do, you rub them in the wrong way or you insult them. One small thing, they get easily provoked and they get angry with you and they will even put case on you. Isn't it? That's how the rich are. But you are choosing the rich, he says, and then?
Do not they blaspheme that worthy name by the which ye are called?
You see, and they blaspheme the worthy name by which you are called. They speak lightly of God, isn't it? They celebrities and rich, super rich people, how many times they mock God. Not only in the movies, they use this curse word with God. You see, somebody asked, one of those people, do you use curse word about your mother? He said, no way. Why? You love your mother, so you can, in no circumstance you use a curse word for your mother. But how come you use the name of God? This F word is used alongside with God and Jesus. How often these words are used? Not only in the movies, but because they use in the movies, all the people who see movies, the children, the generation after generation, they're using that word. Words like holy shit. What meaning is there? What is holy about shit? Isn't it? And words like God damn it and using F word for God and all these things is so common. And these are the ones who use these not only curse words but also openly mock God. In one of the award ceremonies, I think the Emmy Awards, one Kathy Griffins, you know what she says? Openly you can Google and see on YouTube. She says, many are mentioning Jesus and saying Jesus is a cause for me to get this award. But here I am telling you about my award. No one had less to do with these awards than Jesus, she says. You see? And then she holds up her award and she says, sucking Jesus, this award is my God, she says. And everybody is cheering her. Openly in the microphone she is saying, sucking Jesus, this award is my God, she says. And all the people that are there, for these ceremonies, how the people go fully dressed up. Of course, the women are undressed and so is half naked way they dress and come with all the jewelries and with all the signature perfumes they put on, and they go and sit there as big shots, isn't it? They think they are the cream of society, the topmost people in the world. That's how the media also treats them, you see, how they, as they get down from the car and walk on that way, how the photographers go behind them and all these things. But they are so godless and they mock God. And in one of the recent, on just 2 days before this fires broke out, there was this 82nd Golden Globes award ceremony. In that one Nikki Glaser was presiding. She says, I would like to show who got the most mentions. And then she says, cast and crew got 11 mentions. And then next she says, moms got 3 mentions. And then she says, puts the name of God, and she said, the God, the creator of the universe, he got no mention, 0, and everybody is laughing. And then she says, this is not a surprise coming from a godless town as ours. In that same place, in less than 48 hours, fire broke out. And till today, everything that is surrounding, including all those big hotels and studios and auditoriums in which they have all these great events, they're all getting burnt down. And totally, even as I talk now, it is burning and reduced ashes, and nobody is able to save them. It looks as if it will go on and on until nothing will remain there. That's how it seems. So, brothers and sisters, these are those who blaspheme the worthy name by which you are called. And therefore, what is clearly happening, we can see as a direct judgment from God. And as it is written will happen in the last days, it is happening. It is one of the wealthiest places in America. Now, even in normal times, even in peaceful time, this is not a war time, yet nobody is able to save those houses and those people, isn't it? How many people are trying to put off that fire, but nobody. And our Lord Jesus said this, if this happens when in a green tree, when the tree is green, imagine what will happen when it is dry. Means he is talking about people doing this evil thing to him in a normal day. Just imagine if there is future wars and earthquakes and pandemics and all happening. What will be the situation? When even in normal times, they are not able to put out this fire. And among all the firefighters, people were asked, they were asked this question, what can stop this fire? Because winds are blowing hard and that embers are going far and taking the fire and spreading everywhere. What can be done? And the only thing that can stop this is rain, brothers and sisters. And who can send rain? It is God. If God minds, just within 5 minutes, everything can be put off. All the fire will go off. But God is choosing not to send rain. That itself is proof that God's anger has come upon this wicked city. Brothers and sisters, many people had prophesied long ago that if at all the destruction should come upon America, it should start with Los Angeles. It is called the city of angels, but in reality it is the city of fallen angels, brothers and sisters. Because the very spirit of Hollywood is against God. And the devil is using all these movies and all these actors to mislead the people into sinful ways, to curse God and to mock God in a godless way. All this is evil entertainment, and all the cries has gone up to God, and God has begun to strike down California. And brothers and sisters, from this we believers should learn one thing, that the time is short. And that is what James till now is speaking about the rich people, the rich in the world, how they live and how they wail and weep for their destruction that is coming. And finally, what does he say in James chapter 5 verse 7?
Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and later rain.
You see, again, rain is mentioned here. God could send rain, but he is not sending rain upon these godless people. But for us, he will send rain. And he is asking us to be patient till the coming of the Lord, because when all these things are happening, it's a warning to us. It's a warning to us. We are in the last days. So we too may be in some difficulty. When the world is coming to end, we too are here and we may have to face some of this tribulation. Yet he says, be patient, because the Lord's coming is near. When the Lord comes, we will reap the harvest of all our hard work, for all the good works we have done, for all the holy life we have lived. God is going to give us the reward. It's like reaping time will come when the Lord returns, and he says, be patient. We read that once again.
Be ye also patient. Establish your hearts.
So we have to be patient and establish our heart. Means we should have a pure heart. We should purify ourselves, sanctify ourselves, and be strong in faith. Though thousands may fall besides us, 10,000s may fall down next to us, yet God, who has promised to protect us, will protect us. And then when he returns, he will take us into his kingdom glory, where the true riches of people will be recognized and the true servants of God will become celebrities. That's when they will take control of the whole world and begin to rule with Jesus on the next world. So brothers and sisters, when we see these fires burning like that, let us clearly take warning from it, and let us not go after these people and their evil ways, and let us not fall in for the love of money, but let us be content with what we have, and let us be rich in good works, rich in faith, and above all to establish our heart in doing things which is pleasing to God. May God bless these words. Thank you.